imagine this for a second. You're dreaming of that incredible, maybe once-in-a-lifetime, budget-friendly adventure. Backpacking, maybe? Through the Himalayas. Seeing amazing cultures. Trekking ancient paths. Nepal often comes up as the place for that,
Yeah.
Just unparalleled beauty, deep culture.
Oh, absolutely. It holds such a powerful allure for so many people.
But what if I told you that very dream, that accessible adventure, is actually, well, quietly becoming much more expensive
Yeah.
and maybe less accessible for the average traveler?
It's a really stark reality setting in, isn't it? Despite being this global icon, Nepal's grappling with some pretty major economic shifts, and these are fundamentally changing how travel there works and feels.
Yeah, it's like this perception gap. We're seeing what you could almost call a cost of living trap, and it's catching out not just tourists, but locals too.
Exactly. Which brings us to our topic today. We're taking a close look at Nepal's cost of living trap for tourists and locals alike, skyrocketing costs and misguided policies.
It's a really fascinating situation, and honestly, a bit concerning in parts when you dig into it.
hmm Our mission today is really to unpack the key insights from some recent analyses. There's a particularly good piece by guidebook author David Ways that sheds a lot of light on this. We want to understand why. Why is Nepal, with all its magic, becoming harder to reach, especially if you're on a tight budget?
Right. What are the real factors driving these changes, and what does it actually mean for you, the visitor,
Yeah.
but also, crucially, for the Nepalese people living there?
We'll be digging into all of that.
And just quickly, for anyone wanting to read more, the link to that article by David Ways and our other source materials will be right there in the description. So let's dive in. When you first glance at Nepal's cost of living stats, they look amazing, right?
They really do. It's often listed as one of the cheapest places on Earth, something like 196th out of 197 countries globally.
Yeah, like you see figures quoted monthly cost for one person around $384, maybe $964 for a family before rent. Sounds incredible.
On paper, yes, absolutely. That's the perception. But this is exactly where the twist comes in. That number, it doesn't really capture the day-to-day reality anymore, especially with everything that's been happening economically.
Right. That initial affordability just sort of evaporates when you start adding in, well, pretty serious inflation, the fact they rely so heavily on imports, a lot of local prices being pegged to the US dollar, and then some, frankly, quite steep, even discriminatory fees.
Those are the key ingredients creating this financial trap, as you called it.
So inflation first. Even if the overall rate has maybe eased a tiny bit recently.
That's just the average, you know? The real story is in the cost of essentials. Our sources point to things like sunflower oil, pre-pandemic, maybe $1.32 liter. By 2022, it was closer to $2.39. That's nearly double.
Wow, that's huge for a basic cooking item.
And basic food prices overall have reportedly up around 20%. That's not just a little pinch. It's a direct hit on what people can afford day in, day out for everyone.
And that really underlines Nepal's dependence on imports, doesn't it? Particularly from India.
Precisely. The reliance means local prices are just completely tied to global ups and downs. Plus, the Nepalese rupee, the NPR, has lost ground against the US dollar, something like 2% appreciation since 2021, which doesn't sound like much, but it adds up when you import so much.
And then there are remittances, the money sent home by Nepalists working abroad. That's
Yeah.
massive for their economy.
Huge. Around 20% of GDP, give or take. It's still a vital lifeline. But sources indicate a slight dip recently, from maybe 12.9% growth in H1 FY24 down to 12.4% in H1 FY25. It just adds another layer of financial strain on households back home. Less purchasing power.
And it's not like prices are rising uniformly everywhere in the country.
Not at all. Big difference between urban and rural. You know, finding an apartment in Kathmandu might set you back quite a bit per square meter, roughly $1,678 according to one source, whereas rural areas are still much more affordable.
And food, too, I imagine.
Yeah, same story. A meal out in the city might be a couple of US dollars, maybe more. But head out to a village, you can probably still find a good del pot or some momos for under $1 at a local spot.
So for locals, especially with wages, how does that stack up?
That's where it gets really tough. The average monthly salary after taxes is cited at around $237. That barely covers maybe 70% of typical urban living expenses. And the minimum wage, it's 17,300 NPR, which is about $128 a month. It gets adjusted, but slowly. It's constantly lagging behind the real cost increases.
So just making ends meet becomes a real challenge for ordinary Nepalists.
A profound challenge, yes.
Okay, so bringing this back to you, the listener, if you're planning a trip or maybe even thinking of staying longer, what's the takeaway?
Well, it means those headline low cost of living figures can be pretty misleading. You have to factor in how inflation and import costs actually translate to what you pay for things on the ground. It's a kind of hidden cost for travelers.
And a very real daily burden for locals.
Absolutely. And that burden, or at least the cost disparity, is amplified by this two-tier system that our sources talk about quite a bit.
Ah, yes, the two-tier system. Tell us about that. Foreigners paying more.
Essentially, yes. For many bigger ticket items, foreigners often pay significantly more. Think domestic flights, they can easily run $150, $200. And often, these prices are pegged directly to the US dollar.
Why pegged them to the dollar?
Well, the thinking seems to be to maximize profit through the exchange rate. If the rupee weakens, they still get their target dollar amount. But it's most blatant when you look at permits, especially for trekking.
Right, the permits. Give us some examples.
Okay, Upper Mustang, iconic trek, amazing place. Foreigners, you're looking at a $500 fee for a 10-day permit.
$500.
Yep. Locals, they go in free. And there's a real irony here. Sources point out that new Chinese trade routes are actually making Mustang less isolated than it historically was. But at the same time, you're seeing apparently more urban Nepalists heading there for holidays parties, which puts its own strain on the local heritage, you know?
That's a complex dynamic. What about other treks?
Manaslu is another one. For 2025, there's a new $100 restricted area permit, and you still need the $20 TINS card on top of that. Locals, nothing. And again, there's development happening like roads for hydropower projects, which some argue diminishes the wild appeal, yet the fees go up.
Are there smaller fees popping up too?
Yeah, in some rural sections, like parts of the Annapurna circuit, there's a new $10 fee just for foreigners. Locals are free. The unintended consequence seems to be that these easily accessible historic sites can get really overcrowded, which impacts the experience and maybe the sites themselves.
It's a tricky balance. Is there anywhere bucking the trend?
There's one interesting, kind of rare exception, Bhaktapur, the ancient city. For 2025, they reportedly shifted away from a USD-pegged $15 entry fee to a flat 1,800 Nepalese rupees for foreigners. It's still way more than the 100 NPR locals pay, but moving away from the dollar peg is notable.
Interesting. But overall, what's the impact of all these fees?
Well, they can add anywhere from, say, $50 to that huge $500 onto your trek budget. That's a massive chunk, especially for budget backpackers. It definitely deters people. And while locals getting free access is understandable in principle, it can lead to those sacred or fragile areas being overwhelmed, sometimes shifting their use from, pilgrimage or preservation towards just recreation.
And it's not just official fees causing prices to rise, is it? There's talk of price gouging too.
Seems like it, yeah. Take fuel. Nepal apparently gets a decent amount, maybe 36% of its oil from Russia, sanction-free. But petrol prices shot up 30%, diesel 33% back in 2022.
So why the jump if the source is cheaper?
The sources suggest it's down to taxes imposed by the state-owned Nepal Oil Corporation, plus profits taken by the Indian refineries they rely on. End result, inflated transport costs for absolutely everyone, farmers, businesses, tourist buses, you name it.
And food prices, you mentioned they were up 20%.
Right. And this is despite Nepal massively increasing its exports of edible oils to India, like over a 1,500% surge in the last fiscal year mentioned. Yet, local prices remain high. Both local and multinational supermarkets seem to be following global trends, inflating prices, reporting record profits. It feels disconnected from the actual cost of goods sometimes.
So for local Nepali families, especially low-income ones,
It hits them the hardest. They might avoid the tourist permit fee, sure, but these rising costs for fuel, food, transport, coupled with prices often influenced by the dollar peg, it squeezes already tight budgets incredibly hard. Their free access to places like Upper Mustang, if they use it for recreation, also adds pressure on those very sites.
it really is a tangled web.
Yeah.
Which leads us neatly into Nepal's tourism sector itself. It feels like it's at a crossroads, facing some big challenges and, well, maybe some questionable priorities from the official bodies.
Undeniably. Tourism is vital. Back in 2019, it was nearly 8% of GDP, supported over 1 million jobs. Arrivals did pass 1 million again in 2023, which sounds positive. But the projection for 2025 is only around 1.2 million. They were actually targeting 1.6 million. So it signals a kind of stagnation, not the strong rebound maybe hoped for.
And part of the issue, according to the sources we looked at, seems to be a bias from the Nepal Tourism Board, NTB, and the Trekking Agencies Association, TN.
Yes, there seems to be a real push towards prioritizing high-end tourism. They appear much more interested in the tourist who drops, say, $3,000 on a prepackaged 2-week luxury tour compared to the backpacker who might spend that same $3,000, but over 5 months, living locally.
That distinction is crucial, isn't it? Where does the money actually go?
Exactly, that high-end tour money. It tends to flow mostly to the big operators based in Kathmandu, often the ones with close ties to NTB and TN. But the backpackers' money, that goes directly into the pockets of local tea house owners, village guides, small guest houses, local restaurants, especially out in the rural trekking areas.
So this elitist shift, as some call it, actually undermines the diversity of tourism and hits those rural economies that have relied on budget travelers for decades.
It certainly seems to, and it doesn't stop there. There's the mandatory guide policy introduced back in April 2023.
Ah, yes. Needing a licensed guide for treks now.
Supposedly, it costs $20–50 a day, which adds up fast. Though enforcement seems patchy. The whole Sulukhumbu region, where Everest is, reportedly just rejected implementing it. But it's another barrier, another cost.
And the TIMS card, the Trekker Information Management System.
Still required, still $20. But here's the kicker. Sources indicate that in 2025, there are basically no operational checkpoints actually checking these cards on many routes.
So where does the money go?
Well, NTB and TN collect it. The argument is it mostly funds their administration, not trail safety or infrastructure as you might expect. This really annoys budget travelers paying a fee for a system that doesn't seem fully operational or transparent.
Okay, another major issue highlighted is the collapse of Chinese tourism. That was a huge market pre-pandemic.
Massive. Nepal offered free visas, and in 2019, they had nearly 170,000 Chinese visitors. Nepali businesses invested heavily. Hotels, restaurants, guides, catering specifically to them. They went all in.
I don't know.
Post-pandemic, numbers have plummeted well under 50,000 projected for this year. But it's more than just fewer tourists. What's happened is Chinese businesses themselves have bought property, built hotels.
In Nepal.
Yes. And now they operate these almost completely self-contained tours. Chinese airlines fly them in, Chinese drivers pick them up, Chinese guides lead them, they stay in Chinese-owned hotels, and even pay using Chinese systems like WeChat.
Wow. So the revenue.
A huge chunk of it flows directly back to China. Very little actually stays within the Nepalese economy, hitting those local businesses that initially invested so heavily. It's a significant leakage.
That's tough. And then there's the whole issue with airports.
Ah, yes. Nepal's a bizarre obsession, as one source puts it, with building new international airports, often amidst a lot of controversy and questions about feasibility.
Like Lumbini International Airport, near Buddha's birthplace.
Exactly. Pitched as this major hub for Buddhist pilgrims, but reality, very few international flights actually land there. The infrastructure around it isn't great. It's a long, long drive, 5–6 hours plus to Kathmandu. It seems to mostly serve Nepalists working overseas who are looking for slightly cheaper flights home, not really the intended tourist market.
And Pokhara International, another big new one.
Also plagued with problems. There was that tragic crash in early 2023, killing 72 people, which raised safety concerns, and fundamentally it struggles to attract international airlines. The location isn't ideal for large jets. Some say the facilities aren't quite right.
So billions spent on these projects.
Billions, which could have arguably been spent on much more pressing needs, like improving the dangerous roads tourists actually use, or properly maintaining the popular trekking trails. Basic infrastructure that directly impacts the visitor experience and safety.
Are there other background challenges adding to the pressure?
Definitely. Climate change is a huge one, threatening glaciers and trekking routes. Upgrades happening at the main Tribhuvan International Airport in Kathmandu, while needed, are also pushing up ticket prices. And then there's the spending by the wealthy Nepali diaspora. Their remittances, while maybe slightly down in growth, still inject billions, $8 billion cited, which can sometimes paint a rosier economic picture than the reality for the core tourism sector. It can mask underlying stagnation.
Okay, it's a lot to take in. So, faced with all this rising costs, fees, policy shifts, what practical advice can we offer someone planning a trip to Nepal now? How can you navigate this new reality?
Right, let's get practical. First off, budget really wisely. Think local for food, eat at the small kajagars. You can still get great meals for under $2 usually. Shop at local markets, not necessarily the big supermarkets where prices might be inflated.
And factor in those extra costs up front.
Absolutely. Mentally prepare for that two-tier pricing, that extra $10 or $20 for entry fees like Bhaktapur's 1,800 NPR. And especially for treks, budget realistically for those permits. $50, $100, even $500 for Upper Mustang. It adds up.
What about booking things like flights?
Try to book domestic flights directly if possible and pay in Nepalese rupees (NPR). Avoid paying USD-pegged prices online if you can, as you'll likely lose out on the exchange rate.
And for trekking specifically.
Plan carefully. You do need to verify if your agency is using licensed guides as per the mandate, even if enforcement varies. Expect that $20–50 per day cost. Definitely get the TIMS card, $20, even if no one seems to check it everywhere it's officially required. And crucially, check the latest regional rules. Are there new fees like that $100 for Manaslu or $10 for certain Annapurna sections?
Choosing where to go matters too, then.
Hugely. Maybe consider Bhaktapur. Despite the fee, it's incredible value. Or look at less famous areas like Damali for potentially lower costs overall. Upper Mustang, honestly, unless you have the $500 permit comfortably in your budget, maybe reconsider for now and really try to support local guest houses, homestays, independent guides. Your money goes further in the community that way rather than to the big NTB-linked operators.
Good point. And infrastructure-wise,
Oh.
which airport?
For international arrivals and departures, Tribhuvan International Airport, TIA, in Kathmandu is still your main, most reliable bet. Despite its own issues and ongoing upgrades which might affect ticket prices slightly, trying to fly into Lumbini or Pokhara internationally just isn't practical right now due to the lack of flights and poor onward connections.
So stick with Kathmandu for flying in and out.
Pretty much, yeah.
Final tips. Sustainability.
Yeah.
Money.
Definitely lean into sustainable options. Choosing homestays, hiring local guides directly where possible, it helps counteract that top-down, high-end focus and supports the rural grassroots economy. And for money, use services like Wise for better exchange rates, transferring funds if you need to. But always carry enough cash in Nepalese rupees, especially in remote areas. Relying on USD can lead to inflated prices or just be impossible.
Okay, so despite all these challenges, there are still ways to have a great, responsible trip. Looking ahead, what's the overall outlook? Are things projected to improve?
Well, there are positive projections out there. The tourism market is forecast to grow, potentially reaching nearly $700 million by 2029 with a respectable annual growth rate, maybe around 8.5%. And there are initiatives like a sustainable tourism project run by NTB and the UNDP aiming to create jobs. So on the surface,
There's optimism, but there's a but, isn't there?
there's a big but. All these positive forecasts are seriously threatened by the very issues we've discussed. That apparent elitist focus from NTB, the dollar-pegged fees driving up costs, the lack of transparency with things like the TIMS card, the ongoing price gouging, the hole left by Chinese tourism revenue leaking out, and the continued investment in these questionable airport projects instead of basic infrastructure.
So what's the suggested path forward, according to the analysis?
It seems pretty clear. Things like fairly regulating those fees, especially permits, making the TIM system transparent, showing where the money actually goes, and ensuring it provides a real service. And critically, shifting the official focus back towards supporting sustainable, budget-friendly tourism that benefits the whole country, not just pouring money into, well, vanity airports, as the source called them. That seems crucial for preserving Nepal's broad appeal and ensuring growth is actually sustainable and benefits its people.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. And maybe that's the final thought for you, the listener. As you digest all this, consider the bigger picture. What are the implications of these tourism policies, not just for your wallet, but for the local communities, for the preservation of culture, for the environment? Beyond just counting visitor numbers or dollars, what kind of tourism truly benefits a place like Nepal and its people in the long run?
That's a powerful question to reflect on.
How can our choices as travelers actively contribute to a more positive, equitable vision for the places we love to visit?
So wrapping up then, Nepal, still incredibly alluring, is definitely navigating a really complex period. Rising costs, specific fees hitting tourists hard, policy decisions that seem to be reshaping who feels welcome and who benefits. It impacts everyone, visitors and locals alike.
It's a potent reminder that where we choose to spend our money when we travel has real consequences. It can either help sustain local economies and cultures or inadvertently undermine them.
But let's end on a positive note. The cultural richness, the sheer majesty of the Himalayas, the warmth of the Nepalese people that all endures. And with careful, conscious planning, understanding these dynamics, you can absolutely still have an incredible, deeply meaningful experience there.
Definitely. And if you want to explore responsibly and get really practical, in-depth advice for navigating this evolving landscape, we absolutely recommend checking out resources like David Wei's website, The Longest Way Home Nepal Travel, and his very comprehensive guidebooks. They offer truly invaluable insights for today's traveler in Nepal.